Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. I'm your host, Gorgeous George, and with me as always, some of the sharpest MMA minds in the biz. This week we got Nolan King, the Boston shot caller, is ready to roll. He says he's going to own this segment the way his Red Sox owned the Yankees last night. Danny Segura joins us this week. The man has the pulse of everything that goes down in the 305, all of South Florida for that matter. And rounding out the panel, it's Mike Bond, another killer in the MMA game. Says his cardio's on point. He's ready to go 5 rounds. Back on the ones and twos, it's Cold Coffee. Great to have him back. Let's get to it. All right, fellas. So Michael Chandler suggested this past week that Charles Oliveira get that payday versus Conor McGregor while he fights Islam Makhachev for the vacant UFC lightweight title. However, we now have a new title contender in Rafael Fiziev, who defeated Rafael dos Anjos in the main event at UFC on ESPN 39. Let us not forget Beneil Dariush, who has won 7 straight and is targeting a return in the fall. He's also in the mix. At this moment in time, what's the best pairing for the lightweight division's upcoming title fight at 155 pounds? That's the question. 4 minutes are on the clock. Nolan, you're leading off.
Yeah, I guess it would depend on what you think the word best, like in what scenario. And for me, I would have to give it up to Charles Oliveira. Like, what does he want next? I know he doesn't necessarily have the title theoretically, but I think we all agree that he's solidified himself right now as the guy that you would call a champion, that you would call the best lightweight in the world. So for me, I think it should be up to him. He has to be in the next title fight, because I think if you don't put him in, it kind of degrades whoever does get put in the title fight. So Charles Oliveira, he's on the streak. If he wants Conor McGregor, I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but I think that could be the fight that they could and should put together. I mean, Charles Oliveira at this point in time has earned a major payday. And unfortunately for him, that whole thing went down with the scales, and he does not have a title holding it right now. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't be fighting for the belt. He shouldn't get the championship treatment, and he shouldn't have say in who he fights next and what kind of big payday he gets. So if Charles Oliveira wants Conor McGregor, I think regardless, Charles Oliveira has to fight for a title. Have Makhachev and Chandler fight for a number 1 contender slot if that's the route that they go. Because, I mean, let's face it, Conor's a big payday. Conor's going to come back into the biggest fight that the UFC can put him in. So I think we just got to accept the reality of who he is in this sport as kind of an anomaly.
Nolan, you did say you did use the word earn, though, for Charles Oliveira. Has Conor McGregor earned it?
Well, I mean, we could say that over and over again, right? I mean, I'm not the one making the rules here. I think that it definitely is just kind of the reality of the situation we live in. I mean, Charles Oliveira, if I was Dana White, I would do Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev, but I'm not Dana White, and I know how Dana White works, and I just don't want Charles Oliveira to get anything less than what he's earned, which is a big fight and a title fight.
All right. How about you, Danny? What are your thoughts?
I love Charles Oliveira. I love what he's doing in the division, and I would love for him to get a big payday. But at the same time, there is a line of contenders piling up, and I think that needs to be addressed. I think on top of that line is Islam Makhachev. I think he's due for a title shot. I think stylistically that'd be a very, very fun fight with Charles Oliveira. So I'm all for that fight. I do want to see Conor McGregor fight Nate Diaz in that trilogy. I think that trilogy needs to be done to close that sort of loop. And, you know, Nate Diaz is on the last fight of his contract. So I think it's best to go make that next. But yeah, I'm all for Oliveira Makhachev. That's my fight.
All right. How about you, Mike Bond? Sort this out. You got a wild card in the mix, or are you flowing with these guys?
Not really. I mean, the pretty straightforward fight to me seems to be Oliveira versus Makhachev. I think that's the fight we're going to get in October in Abu Dhabi. The Conor McGregor thing, I appreciate Charles Oliveira pushing for it. I just don't know if it's realistic right now. I mean, from what we've heard from Conor himself, from what we see in the photos, all that stuff, I don't know if that guy's ever making 155 again. So unless they want to bring Oliveira up to 170 to do it, at which point I think kind of loses all meaning. I think there's a lot of other fights you could do with Conor at 170, Jorge Masvidal being one. So I just don't know if it really makes sense right now. I mean, if they say, Conor, we're willing to give you a title shot, come to 155 fight Oliveira, maybe he's willing to kind of change up how he's approaching his diet and his training and go back down there. But from what I've heard, Conor McGregor probably not fighting until next year, early next year. The timing just doesn't seem right for it. So I think maybe we could get that after Oliveira versus Makhachev. But right now, I think that's the fight we're getting. Oliveira wins. I think he gets the belt back. All sorts of opportunities and doors open up for him at that point. But if he's really insistent on trying to chase that fight, you could pick any lightweight from the top 10 and have them fight Islam Makhachev, and you'd have a pretty damn good fight for yourself. Obviously, Michael Chandler being one of them, plenty of other guys out there. I think it's all in very good position for them. The world completely changes if Oliveira is not in that title fight next.
For sure, yeah. Dariush's name, you got to include that. Volkanovski, I'm sorry, he's probably going to fizzle out because of the broken hand, but for a second there, a lot of people were like, All right, enough of that. One topic two. Fellas, did you notice that RDA was taking them gloves off after his fight? I saw that and thought, not another one, because we've been losing a lot. But all he wanted to do was just get on with the normal post-fight ritual where you just dust yourself off and go back to being a human being. So let me be clear, RDA did not retire. But with the recent string of retirements of some big names these past few years, it got me thinking, is the UFC doing enough of a good job in replacing these stars? 4 minutes are on the clock. Danny, it's on you, sir.
I don't think they are, man. I really don't. I think we see Robbie Lawler, right? We see Rafael dos Anjos. We see Donald Cerrone, Jim Miller, all these like big names that are either, retiring or on the verge of retirement. I don't really see the newcomers sort of, stepping up and taking that role as far as stardom goes. Yes, of course, there's a Sean O'Malley, and there's a few guys out there that are currently, moving a lot fan-wise. But in terms of what we used to see as far as like name value and weight, I don't really sense that. And I do think it's because of the volume of events nowadays. I think because there's so many events, and not only in the UFC, but we have PFL, we have Bellator, BKFC. I mean, so much going on in the world of combat sports that it's just difficult to really become a star in this current landscape, because there's so much going on and the attention is now divided in multiple places and so many fighters now. So I do think the UFC is still producing talent, still producing stars, still doing a good job. But I do think back then, just given the landscape that we were in a few years ago, it was a lot easier to become a star, become a little bit of a household name and have more weight to your name, in my opinion, than currently. So yeah, I do think UFC is overall doing a good job. But that era where we saw the Dos Anjos and these guys sort of built nice names, I think that's in the past.
Yeah, and Danny, don't forget about that one league where you pretend you're going to arm wrestle, and then you guys just start stealing on each other as well, man. I've been watching some of that. How about you, Mike Bond? Are the stars coming? We just don't know it yet, or what's up?
Probably partially, yeah. I mean, I think the question we should be asking is, does the UFC need to make these stars? I mean, they're at the point where they have kind of a fixed income when it comes to their television deals. They're not reliant as heavily on selling this many pay-per-views or getting someone who can do this or that. They run their shows, they get their fee from ESPN, their other rights holders, and they go on their merry way. So I don't think they're under the pressure to make some of the stars as they maybe were, in previous years. So I think that plays a huge part in it. But I think for the most part, just the way the sport is going, how many fighters there are, how many talented fighters there are, there's going to be people there that you could have headlining shows, pay-per-views. We're just kind of in this middle stage right now. All those names you listed off are dudes with like 30 UFC fights. And a lot of the guys that we've seen come into the UFC through Contender Series and all these other avenues, they're still very young in their career. I mean, a guy like Sean O'Malley doesn't even have 10 UFC fights yet. Where is he going to be when he has 20, 25? So I think right now we're just kind of in an interesting stage where these guys haven't had the time or the experience to really flourish into that star. But I think in the next few years, we're going to see some of these names emerging as we see some of the old guard continue to go out. It's just kind of the rotation of the sport and the way this thing's work. And it's going to continue to be that way going forward.
Interesting. All right. So yeah, the UFC is kind of the big deal, the big seller.
Always,
the fighters
those three letters are always going to be bigger than any fighter, and that's how they want it.
Yeah, I feel you, man. All right, how about you, Nolan? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, going off and kind of combining Danny and Mike's thoughts, I think especially over the pandemic, we've seen this brand explode. And maybe, as Danny said, the attention's kind of spread out amongst all these fighters that are coming in. But I do think that that it seems like, to me, fans are more attached to more fighters than they used to be. Like, maybe there aren't these guys that everybody's behind or everybody's hyping. Like, there's not a lot of Paddy Pimbletts or Hamzats. Like, there's not as many as there used to be. But like, I see cards sometimes, and people like Terrence McKinney or Adrian Yanez or Jeff Molina, these guys have done a good job on social media promoting themselves. Like, I see people gravitating towards these really low prelims with like inside jokes that people have made online. And it seems like each fighter's personality has caught the attention of fans. Maybe there's just more hardcores than there used to be, but that's kind of my take, is like, it's spread out among everyone.
One thing's for sure, Yanez became a star in Brazil. after his last fight. And how about International Fight Week? One of the UFC's biggest stars, Dana White, he wasn't even present. He was lighting fireworks in Bangor, Maine. So yeah, maybe this machine just can move on without anybody. All right. Third topic here. After a few weeks of extra bonuses in Singapore, Austin, and Las Vegas, heck, even going back a few months to London, the UFC is back to spreading $200K to 4 fighters, $50K apiece. I was just getting used to the extra bonuses for finishing fights and had this thought: could the fighters and the UFC agree on a $50K bonus for every finisher on the card, regardless of if there's an audience or not or whatever, but do away with the fight of the night bonus? The UFC will probably be paying out more over time, but I think this will be a positive thing in the long run for both parties because it incentivizes the fighters to go for the finish, which is something the UFC likes. So, guys, that's my take. Do you agree or disagree? Starting things off is Mike Bond.
So here's the thing. I don't think they ever actually, were looking at it as a finishing bonus. I think it was just a product of some of those cards being so insane that they could not select for, or they felt like they were doing someone dirty by not getting it out. It's more just like they went to the entire card and handed them out that way instead of having to pick their 4. And that's not going to be the case at every event, as we've seen. There's going to be a couple good finishes and maybe some lesser ones that don't get the bonus. I think this past weekend's card was a pretty good example of that. Would I like to see them move in that direction? Of course, man. I mean, anything we can do to guarantee more money in these fighters' pockets would be awesome. I mean, if I had my choice, they would just combine the show and the win money and everyone would be getting a flat rate. But that's basically a whole other discussion when it comes to fighter pay. But as far as the UFC's bonus system, I think they obviously have their way of looking at it and the way they want to do it. If they were willing to incentivize people more for a guaranteed bonus for a finish, that would be tremendous. We'd all love to see that, but I don't think they're willing to do that restructure right now. I think we're just going to see certain events. If the fights are that damn good and there's, a litany of great finishes, they'll probably be more generous, but I think more often than not, we're probably just going to get that standard 2 performance bonuses, 1 fight of the night, or in some scenarios, 4 performance bonuses.
Mike, but you're a stats guy. You got to probably admit that the reason the fans are going nuts is probably because of the finishes anyway. So I've even heard Brendan Fitzgerald say the Apex is going nuts. Granted that you can only have 300 people go nuts versus 20,000, but that's why I think the finishes is the key. Yeah,
I mean, we'd obviously love to have it go that way. I don't know if it's honestly a game changer. We'd have to see how it goes. If they put a guaranteed finish bonus and the finish rate goes up insane and it makes every card a banger, maybe that's something they look at. I personally feel like it's not going to change the trajectory of the sport or the quality of the UFC cards. I think if they're going to pan out how they're going to pan out regardless, and that's more of a matchmaking thing.
All right, how about you, Nolan? You feeling me? Early fist bump?
Yeah, I'm feeling you for the most part. Half fist bump your way. I think that the finish bonus is across the board is a good way to incentivize the fighters to get those finishes. However you want to call it. Like maybe there's a guy that's up 2-0. Why would he can just coast the third round or he can go out and get a finish? Like those are the sort of things. Like I think maybe we put too much weight into it. Like a lot of times these guys are trying as hard as they can to boost their stock, to boost their brand, get a win, whatever. But I think that the fight of the night bonus, if we were to put those finish bonuses in, I would hate to see the certain guys that go to war and then, it's a decision, not get rewarded for that sort of thing. Like this past weekend with Michael Johnson and Jamie Malarkey, like, if those guys didn't get their bonus, I would have felt like kind of like not right about the whole scenario. So keep the fight of the night bonus, throw in the finish bonuses. We've seen them do it now for entire cards. No reason why they can't be doing that going forward. They're having great financial years. I'm just I'm half with you. I'm for the finish bonuses, but I don't think we need to get rid of the fight of the night.
All right, Danny, share your thoughts.
Yeah, I think both Mike and Nolan have great ideas. I would like to see the UFC axe the win bonus. I think all fighters that go out there and step in the cage want to win. However, not all fighters want to get a finish. Sometimes coasting, or taking off a round would allow them to sort of take less risk and get the win, ultimately that bonus. If you had a finish bonus, I think it could maybe, we'd have to see it in play, but it could definitely drive up the finishing rate and just make the product more exciting. Obviously, we would have to wait and see, but I do like that idea. Also, keep the fight night bonuses. I love the fight night bonuses. Great point by Nolan. If there's a banger of a fight, if there's a really good fight, those guys need to get compensated and rewarded for that. What I would say, and John Nash put a graphic on this, the $50,000 mark, and I know I'm going to go a little bit over on this.
Go for it.
Don't give me a yellow card just yet. But those $50,000 bonuses have been in place for many, many years. And look, inflation has gone up, just life has gotten more expensive. And the statistic is that those bonuses, keeping in mind today's economic landscape, are more or less worth $40,000 now. So time to rack those up and make those $60,000.
All right. And since we did go long, just guys, give me a yes or a no. Here's the thing. The guy that lost, that's a terrible word to use. All right. The guy that lost in a banger of a fight gets $50K, but the guy that may have finished just wasn't one of the prettier finishers. He doesn't get $50K. I feel like all finishers could get $50K, and they can just give that other guy a discretionary bonus and go, dog, you came to fight. You know, you lost or whatever, but you came to fight. Here you go. I think that's what I was getting at. Yeah, no, what do you think?
Yeah. The more money for fighters, the better. I think we can all agree on that.
All right. Here's the fourth topic, guys. Here we go. We're going to turn the page this weekend. One of the big fights at UFC on ABC3 is Miesha Tate versus Lauren Murphy. Should Tate win, is she deserving of a title shot versus Valentina Shevchenko? This would be only one win for her at flyweight, but it'd be against a former title contender, and she's kind of Miesha Tate. So what say you? 4 minutes are on the clock. Nolan, we're coming back to you.
Yeah, staying consistent with my Conor McGregor answer of earlier, like we know the UFC likes to pair these, maybe give a fighter with big name recognition a little bit of an extra boost or give them the tiebreaker if they're neck and neck. But I think looking at the landscape of the women's flyweight division right now, Miesha Tate has as good of a shot as anyone if she goes out there and beats Lauren Murphy, a fighter who not too long ago challenged for the belt herself. So for me, I think that it's a combination of a lot of different things. It's a fresh face in the division of a good fighter. It's somebody that's got a big name. It's somebody that if she wins, there's a big if she wins on Saturday, she's beaten a contender. And just the fact that Valentina Shevchenko has cleared everybody else out. I think the math is pretty simple here. I honestly think if she goes out there, impresses on ABC, big audience, one of the bigger names on the card, pretty comfortable saying her and Valentina would be something that the UFC would be interested in.
All right, how about you, Danny? What are your thoughts here? He may have broken Talia Santos' heart, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to make that fight. If you don't, it'd be promotional malpractice. I mean, Valentina Shevchenko has looked so dominant. All the current top 4 fighters in that division have already fought her. What?
Last fight was a split decision. I mean,
it was, but I mean, that fight was a bit of an anomaly, right? Like everything prior to that is just dominance after dominance. And look, Taila Santos is going to be out for a while. Broken orbital bone is not an easy thing to heal from, and it takes time. So if Miesha Tate were to go out there and pick up a victory, you got to make that fight. I mean, it's a huge name. Valentina Shevchenko clearly is like one of the better fighters, one of the best fighters in women's MMA history. But what maybe has lacked a little bit is the stardom. I mean, clearly she's, well known among the fans, but she's not like a Ronda Rousey type. So Miesha Tate, given her stature, given her name, would definitely prop her up and put her over and get her more fans. And look, if it were to sort of blow up in the UFC's face, this whole plan, and Miesha Tate were to become champion and you lose a dominant champion in Shevchenko, Tate is a huge name. You can run an immediate rematch back. It'd be another big fight. I mean, I think you have to make it. It's a no-brainer.
All right, Mike Bond, you going to be Derek Cleary here and go against the grain, or is it unanimous?
It's pretty unanimous. I mean, how can you listen to what these guys said and strongly disagree? I mean, it just makes so much sense. Obviously, Miesha Tate has the name. Valentina Shevchenko, I think she lost a little bit of the steam coming off that last one. I mean, there was so much talk of her moving up and challenging the winner of Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena too. And I think that's cooled a little bit coming off this last one. She can go there and beat Miesha Tate. I think a lot of that comes back. That's one that gets a lot of eyeballs on her, and then she could potentially go for the champ move after that. And she honestly needs this. I mean, and it's somewhat fascinating. I mean, depends how Miesha Tate looks, of course, against Lauren Murphy this weekend, but the things that we saw from Taila Santos, I think you could look at Miesha Tate and say, hey, she does some of those things really well. And she's able to, carry her power and her grappling prowess and all that stuff down 10 pounds to this division. I think she potentially does have some stylistic challenges for Valentina Shevchenko. Would I pick her to win? Absolutely not. But I think she could give us a more competitive fight than a lot of them that we've seen out of Valentina. And I think at this point during her reign, that's all we're asking for, right? Like, we were so awestruck at one point that Jennifer Maia just won a single round off Valentina Shevchenko. Then she goes in there and has a pretty close one, maybe fortunate by the headbutt, however you want to look at it. She could have lost that night for sure. So she's looking less invincible at this point. So to me, it all adds up. Miesha Tate is what this division has been begging for in terms of a contender with a name and all that stuff. So I am absolutely all for this, but it's on her. I mean, she has the ball in her court. She needs to go out and deliver on Saturday. Then I think they serve this up to her on a silver platter.
Yeah, a good finish and a good post-fight call-out, and I think it's a done deal. Good stuff, guys. All right, so before this next one, I just want to say that courtesy of our friends at MMA Bobblehead, best comment in the YouTube section or in the MMA Junkie section will get one of those MMA Bobbleheads. I stress, however, must live in the USA. All right, in the main event at UFC on ABC3, Brian Ortega squares off against Yair Rodriguez. Should be a great scrap. However, do you guys feel like the winner of the fight is in title contention, or even more specifically in the pole position that's arguably held by Josh Emmett? 4 minutes are on the clock. Danny, get things started and make me look like a fool. Say that name right.
I love Brian Ortega and I love Yair Rodriguez, but I mean, whatever both guys do, even if it's a spectacular finish, one of the best finishes of 2022, that cannot surpass the body of work that Josh Emmett has done in the division. We're talking about a 5-fight winning streak, which is very hard to do at featherweight. Also, 3 bonuses in his last 4 bouts, so he's an exciting fighter. It wouldn't be like you're replacing a very exciting fighter in Ortega or Rodriguez to skip a boring fighter in Josh Emmett. No, he's exciting. He's got a nice win streak. I mean, you got the whole package there for a title challenger. So I do think that Yair Rodriguez maybe has a little bit of a case because he hasn't faced Volkanovski. But even then, I think Josh Emmett is well on his way to get a title shot. He's done enough. 37 years old. You can't cook him for any longer. I mean, he's ready. Now is his time to make that fight. So I'm all for that fight. And no, I don't think Rodriguez or Ortega, as much as I like them, can surpass what Emmett has done.
Mike, are you on board with that? And do you have another wild card that I may not have mentioned?
I think
Mike, I need an equal pronunciation on these names.
Please, let's hear it.
Definitely not. I'm not even going to attempt it. Nevertheless, I do think what Danny's saying in the world of fairness is correct, but we've used it a few different times on this episode. I'm talking about Conor McGregor, talking about Miesha Tate, the word earned. Earned does not mean anything in these scenarios, man. Like, it is going to be what it is. I think Yair Rodriguez, his background and the fact that, he's got Mexico, his fighting style, all this stuff, I think that is infinitely more valuable than Josh Emmett's winning streak. If he can go out there and get a strong victory, I think there's a pretty decent chance, as long as he is healthy, which I know has been a problem for Rodriguez over the past few years. He is, I think, in a pretty good spot. So if you're Josh Emmett, you're kind of sitting on your hands and hoping this fight sucks, or obviously that Brian Ortega can go out there and get the win, because I think there's about 0 chance Ortega's getting a rematch anytime soon. So as we kind of talked about last week, I think Henry Cejudo is a wild card in this division. If he can get, cleared of his USADA window, and if they can negotiate him fighting at 45, I think there's a real possibility there. But man, I'm just what Josh Emmett's saying about how he got treated at UFC 276 with like the seating snub, the fact they didn't, put him on the broadcast to talk about, I think this about Volkanovski. I just don't get a good feeling for Josh Emmett right now. So I think, as similar to Miesha Tate, the ball is in Rodriguez's court. If he can go out there and get a win and a finish, I think he is in pole position, even though I do not think his resume warrants it nearly as much as Josh Emmett. This is just the world we live in now, and he is a way more sellable fight.
Wow. All right. Nolan, how about you? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm kind of in line with Mike. I think, this is a pretty clear-cut case, I think, of a one-sided title eliminator. I guess it will kind of depend on how Yair looked. I mean, the fight against Max Holloway was a loss, but he looked so great in it. I think he kind of exceeded everyone's expectations and went to war with a guy that's really been the closest to beating Volkanovski. So for me, I think Yair's, if he goes out there, he has, if he finishes Brian Ortega, I think that's going to put a stamp on it. If he goes out there and looks good, beats Brian Ortega, I still think that it will go to him. If he goes out there and it's kind of lackluster, I think maybe Josh Emmett, who, again, like Mike said, has earned it. I think that, his body of work, him being a fresh face in that division, the winning streak, he should be the guy that gets it. But the reality is, if Yair goes out there and wins, I think he's going to get that tiebreaker boost again.
1 in a row against 5 in a row, though, guys. I mean, I get the cachet argument, the popularity argument, the pay-per-view argument, but geez, I thought when it was close, maybe you give it to the more popular guy. I don't know about like this. Doesn't seem like it's close.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is you can look at Josh Emmett's last win. I mean, the court of public opinion. It's not his fault that the judges scored it that way, but people are kind of not happy with the way that played out. So that might, leave a little bit of question in the UFC's mind of what kind of title fight they could sell with him.
All right, Mike, final thought. You had something?
No, I think Nolan hit it on the head there.
Right.
It depends how they want to go with this. I mean, I think if they're going to put Volkanovski in like a stadium in Australia, I don't think the opponent matters too much because he'll sell. So maybe you give it to Josh Emmett in that scenario. But just to me, I haven't seen a swell of interest in a Josh Emmett title fight. So as I said, I don't feel very good for him right now.
Great job, guys, as always. In fact, I think you three were better than last week's three. Don't tell them I said that. Don't forget, folks, a Brian Ortega bobblehead for the best comment in the YouTube section or in the MMA Junkie comment section. And as always, keep it locked on MMA Junkie. We got you covered. This week, UFC on ABC3. They're out in Long Island. We will have a squad out there, and we'll be back to recap it next week here on Spinning Back Clique.